Hi there, Ralph Harris here. In this part 2 of the series called We've Got to Change Marriage, I hope to help you see something that will liberate you from life-draining distractions. One of those is marriage. Now, I'm not kidding. And if you're up for this, then I really recommend you look at part 1 of this, either watch the video or read it, before wading into this one. Otherwise, you might not like me at the end of this, and I don't know if I could live with that. So, in the first part, I said that we've got to lift marriage out of the Old Covenant, out of the Old Testament, because it has bogged down. It's been left behind. Christians haven't done anything different with marriage except to try to do it better, and that won't work. Evidently, it's not working. So we've got to bring it into the new covenant so that it matches up with who and what believers have become, new creations, and where God is in the new covenant. He's in us. That's important. It's supposed to change a lot of things. Unfortunately, God in us is fairly unemployed. And that's what this series is all about, is effectively giving God a job, giving him something to do in us. Wouldn't that be great? Well, growing up, I never once asked the question, never thought about the question, who am I? I didn't think of that, or I didn't bother with it because I was too busy becoming something all the time. I was unveiling my latest creation for all to see and to marvel at. So whatever was needed for any given situation, I became that to the best of my ability. So I was Ralph, the clever and lovable identical twin. Yes, I really do have an identical twin brother. And I was also Ralph, the baseball player. I was Ralph, the pretended Don Juan. I was Ralph, the fly fisherman. Then I became Ralph, the collegian. I had no starting point, no identity of beginning, none. But do you see what a trap that is? If, to begin with, you are not a certain thing, then no matter how you labor, you will not become it. You aren't that. And no one can actually accomplish a change of identity, not truly. You can only work on the facade, except God. He ends the masquerade. He ends the work. He gives to believers an actual, true at the core identity for the first time. Son of God. This is what we become when we receive Christ. And we're born authentic, the real deal. Now we have a core identity and can live truly from that point. Nothing else will ever displace or change your true identity. Not anything. God will always recognize you for who you are. His son. A son. That is your identity to God and to the angels. And really it ought to be our identity to everyone else, to all of us who are Christians. So true and genuine, so important and primary is this identity that God has given to us, sons of God, that all and any other identities for us become simply tributary to the one. A branch, an offshoot of the one, of the primary. Listen to how singular your identity is according to the Apostle Paul, who writes to the Galatians in chapter 3, verse 26. So in Christ Jesus, you are all sons of God through faith. For all of you who were baptized into Christ have clothed yourselves with Christ. There is then neither Jew nor Gentile. Your family isn't your identity. There is neither slave nor free. Your condition or status in life isn't your identity, nor is there male or female. Your plumbing isn't your identity. For you are all one in Christ Jesus. You are all your sons of God in Christ Jesus. If you don't know that, or to the degree that you focus your life upon trying to fashion or to improve upon other lesser tributary identities, is the degree of frustration and futility you will experience because you will be attempting the impossible, to return to when you had no identity. That didn't work, and it's impossible now once you've become a son of God. When people see you then in your role as dad or mom, and for our purpose today, in your role as husband or wife, that is not who you are. It is not primary, it is tributary. Marriage is tributary to who you are and how you live. This does not mean that you cut off all your other roles, that you block off all other tributaries and pay no attention to them. It means that you live and focus upon your primary identity, the one God made, where He's looking at the invisible and the eternal, at what God has made, and not to the invisible and passing away, your tributary identity, because life and love and grace and God comes from and through your primary identity. Let me give you an example. When a couple meets with me about tangled issues in their relationship, after we've talked a while, the most important question that I can ask them is, how is Jesus? Not one time has his or her response been anything other than, I don't know, I'm working on my marriage. Each of them thought they had to fix marriage before they could again know Jesus, as if He had nothing to provide for it. They believed that tributary identity was most important and that it influenced primary identity. In other words, if you have a good marriage, then you must be a Christian. See, they had it backwards. Each of them thought the problem was first tributary, when the only thing tributary does is channel the flow from the source. That's Christian. Another example. Imagine that the Apostle Paul is going to come to your church, your place of gathering on Sunday, this next Sunday morning. And the title of his message is Keys to Success in Marriage. Doesn't that sound good? And Sunday morning dawns, and there he is on stage. Lights all around, maybe some PowerPoint up on the screen. And he begins, and boy, you're all ready for it, Ooh, this is a big moment. Paul's going to speak. And he begins with this. From now on, those of you who are married should live as though you are not. I do not want you to be engrossed in the passing away relationships and things of this world. I don't want you to be concerned with your marriage, how you might please your spouse, or how you might meet his or her needs. Don't do it. That will make a mess of things. Instead, I want you to be singularly devoted to Jesus, who is the source of life and love for the sons and daughters of God and for every relationship and situation they might encounter. That's how you must live, and that is the key to success in marriage. Well, he concludes his sermon, or maybe that's it. What would the feeling be in that room? How would it go? Would there be thunderous applause, a standing ovation for the apostle? Or would it be quiet and tense? I think it would be the latter. That should tell you how enslaved we've become to focusing upon and working on marriage instead of having Jesus provide for it. Now, you must know that Paul doesn't mean this, and you'll find it in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, by the way. He didn't mean it to degrade marriage, but as a way to properly position marriage as a receiver of God's life and love in us. In other words, God in us flows down the tributary of marriage. God in us flows down the tributary of parenting. God in us flows down the tributary of all relationships and situations. Primary to tributary. Do you see it? We are perfectly set up for this in our days. All of us have lots of tributary identities, don't we? I mean, we've got jobs to pay, jobs to do rather, bills to pay, children to raise, relatives to visit and to care for, marriage ceremonies to show up for, all kinds of things. So if you're exhausted, if Christianity has seemingly worn you out, it's because you've been induced to focus upon tributary identities and to labor yourself there. And your primary identity, Son of God, winds up having no practical relevance for you. So what? It's a nice title. I am saying that all that stuff is not Christianity. It's not Christian. And really, aren't you a little bit glad? It hasn't been working anyway, right? Jesus' yoke and burden hasn't been easy, nor light, because you've been shouldering the burden of it all. You don't have to. You're not supposed to. It doesn't fit. Your days and your relationships are for Him with you and in you and then through you. Set your eyes and heart upon Jesus, and He will revive you and work through you. That's Christian. Well, that's all for today. I think it's probably enough. So go for your primary identity, Son of God. He'll see to the tributaries. Okay? See you later.